Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, From Pre-Hire to Retire, Why a Total Approach to Human Capital Management Makes Sense for Schools. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the editor-at-large for eSchool News, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a very informative section. Today's webinar is sponsored by UKG, also known as the Ultimate Kronos Group. Built from a merger that created one of the largest cloud companies in the world, UKG believes organizations succeed when they focus on their people. As a leading global provider of HCM, payroll, HR service delivery, and workforce management solutions, UKG's award-winning Pro, Dimensions, and Ready solutions help tens of thousands of organizations across geographies and in every industry drive better business outcomes, improve HR effectiveness, streamline the payroll process, and help make work a better, more connected experience for everyone. And more specifically to our space, UKG for K-12 is designed to create time and attendance efficiencies that let you spend less time on administrative processes and more time on academics and programs to further student achievement. Their solutions help you manage your most critical workforce issues with tools that simplify extra duty time, reduce compliance risk, improve visibility into subtime, and enable data-driven decisions. And with me today are two panelists, EdTech industry veterans that I know will provide us some great insights into this topic. I know everyone in the audience is now also veterans of the Zoom platform, so please feel free to add in chats and questions as we go along in the conversation if you have either for our experts here today, and we'll try to get those answered. So to the speakers, beginning with Cheryl. Cheryl Abshire is the recently retired Chief Technology Officer for the Calcasieu Parish Public Schools in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Cheryl, I always mispronounce your parish, but that's the way it goes.
One day you're going to learn it's Calcasieu. Like
Calcasieu. All right.
Calcasieu.
All right. She has served as a catalyst for technology integration throughout the nation and internationally, providing leadership on numerous national, state, and district committees, which have focused on the role of technology and curriculum in changing educational practice. Cheryl was recently appointed to the U.S. Department of Education's technical writing team to write the new National Education Technology Plan. Also with us today, Dan Tanner. Dan is the National Director of K-12 Sales for UKG. He leads account strategy, solution support, and education market expertise. Dan is a former public school teacher and administrator. He spent several years teaching all disciplines in the primary and intermediate grades, which gave him the background needed to be a successful teacher and district mentor, teacher, and administrator. Dan has spent 20 years successfully establishing strategic partnerships and providing education solutions to a wide range of school districts and state Department of Education agencies across the U.S. Dan, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Kevin. Nice to be with you. Thanks for having us.
And with that, I might turn it over to you for the first part of our presentation and conversation.
You bet. Thanks so much. So, hey, everyone, we greatly appreciate the time that you spend with us today. We know that you have many things on your agendas and your schedules, and we greatly appreciate the time given here. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to kick off with a conversation that I've had a couple of months back with Cherokee County Schools, which is just outside of the Atlanta metro area. What I call these gentlemen on this recording is the K-12 Trinity. This is a representation of the IT group, finance, as well as HR. Now, when we take those three organizations or departments and the leaders of that conversation, you'll see a great influence and a great understanding of the differences between an ERP as well as an HCM solution. What is the differences? What is the benefits? What are the things that the school district is hoping to achieve? So I'm hoping that you're going to get some clear understanding of why Cherokee County Schools with Brad, Rick, and Ken to talk through that process, and hope you enjoy this time. We'll come back on the other side with a discussion with Cheryl and I. Hey everyone, it's Dan Tanner again. Thanks so much. We've got three exciting people from Cherokee County Public Schools just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Ken Owen is the Chief Financial Officer. Rick Ballou is the Chief Human Resource Officer, and Brad Orth is the Executive Director for Information Services for the school district. They know exactly what you're going through and are sitting in the same seat that you are and continue to do the job. We've got a couple of questions that we want to ask them. Many districts continue to evaluate HR solutions while determining if their existing ERP will meet their needs. We have a couple of questions for you, and so let's get started. So, Ken, what were the key motivators that triggered Cherokee County Schools to begin search for an HCM solution? Why not just use your ERP that you have in place for your HR requirements?
It's a great question. We tried using ERP for that purpose, but Cherokee County School District, like all school districts, we're very labor heavy, labor intensive, right? So most of our budget, in fact, almost 91% of our budget this year is tied up in people, that's salaries and benefits. You can't manage that, then you can't manage the budget, obviously. So in our previous experience, we had a very difficult time managing the number of positions that were out there in our schools. When I asked the question, how many people do we have employed in our schools, I got answers, but then that didn't match up to the expenditures that were going out the window, right? So for me, the primary motivator was get a handle on position control, right? Know how many people you have employed, know what you're paying them, make sure you're paying them the appropriate amount, and that way you can manage your budget. My job is to inform the board and the superintendent monthly of where we stand on budget, right? If I can't tell them that, then I'm not going to be a CFO for very long. Right? And I like being a CFO, so I'd like to keep my job. So that was a motivator for me. I was new to CFO position at the time that we started down this path. And it was something I saw that absolutely had to be done. ERP was not getting that job done for us, so we had to go in a different direction.
Great, I appreciate that.
And honestly, I came on late onto the scene. I think we were maybe 6 months into implementation, and I had been in other districts. And the one thing that I was happy to see with us going to a human capital management system like Kronos was to be able to manage your data and get to your data, because the life cycle of our employees obviously starts before we hire them, and right. To be able to manage that data in a way that we can leverage it to get the very best people is really important. So and then having someone like Brad, we got to brag on Brad here. He was instrumental, having a really good tech guy that understands both finance and human capital and the implications that all that means to the board, and making sure that we're responsible fiscally, but also responsible on how we manage our people is paramount.
Excellent.
And like you said, with an ERP, we've discussed this internally. ERPs are great from a functional and transactional level. They're designed to integrate well with themselves, but not necessarily others. So an HCM, like Rick said, allowed us to address our total human capital process from initiation to conclusion. You know, when they get onboarded to the offboarding, and we develop them, we leverage those assets. Like Ken said, they're the largest expenditure for a school district, accounting for over 90% of that. Monthly, we spend over $32 million on labor. Mm-hmm. So the risk versus reward, the rewards of having a total HCM far outweigh the benefits we could get through an ERP system.
Great. That's great. Thanks for sharing. So let's shift focus a little bit. And you know, as we've discussed, you've had an HCM solution for a while now in your district. So, you know, what specific benefits and successes have you achieved with your HR strategy?
Rick, you want to start with that?
Sure, yeah. So I think the most important piece, in my opinion, has been within HCM, the communication, and I know other school districts that'll be listening to this understand this. It's extremely important for finance and HR to be on the same page, because as Ken stated earlier, We run everything from payroll through that. We're constantly crunching data. And for us to be able to be on the same page monthly is so extremely important. And for us to be able to get that data, to be able to report out to our superintendent at a moment's notice is very important to us. So that alone is extremely important to us. And then also within our divisions, and I don't want to speak for Ken, and he can add to this too, we've been able to build in tremendous efficiencies with our people. People that are in the weeds every day in Kronos. Once they've had that understanding of how HCM works and how it links to Munis, our ERP system, that has really cleaned up a lot of the mistakes that all of us go through in all our districts as far as processing payroll, because it's very complicated. It's extremely complicated. You have benefits, you have payroll, you have, and then managing your human capital as well there. So that's been a tremendous asset. And then from an HR standpoint, it's really important to remember that, you need to have a good HCM system in that it starts before people even enter the system, right? Like I'm looking at data with Ken, with Brad, just before we even recruit, to have and leverage a recruitment plan on what do we need. We have a big initiative on how to diversify our workforce, which is extremely important to us as well. So to be able to get at that data, and then also what kind of onboarding experience are we providing for our employees? How are we taking care of them through the life cycle? And then also how we're using our HCM system to offboard them as well. So, basically that life cycle is a lot easier to manage. It's a lot more robust. You know what I mean? You can pivot very quickly in the system that we're using. So that's high level without getting into the weeds, but those are some of the pluses that I see.
I mean, it just takes you back. I'm sorry, Ken, I was just going to say, it just takes you back to what are the steps and processes from a pre-hire to retire to make sure that it's a seamless process from the beginning to the end.
Absolutely. And it is, to echo what Rick said, it is so important for HR and finance to work together about the budgeting, pulling the data, looking at the same data, that we're not pulling from two different systems. He's looking at one set of data and I'm looking at another. It doesn't work. And that's where we were prior to having this complete HCM and compliance with policy. That is so big. So much of what we did previously was not, policy was not baked into the system. So you had one-offs here. Everywhere was a one-off. And you're not treating your employees right when you're doing that. You're making individual decisions when it's really a policy decision. And if your policies are not working for your employees, then change your policies. We were not managing that very well previously. And you got to treat your people right. We are labor intensive. We want to treat our people right because we succeed when they're successful, right? And so we want to make sure that they are treated well, paid appropriately, and treated with all the respect they are.
And another point too is that with our system, our employees have access to our system.
Absolutely.
So for instance, so they can go into to see what their benefits look like. They can make changes through our system, and we can communicate through our system. So that's a huge lift when it comes to efficiencies and really for our employee experience.
Yeah, I will say this: we pay over 6,000 employees every month, right? It's a big lift. It's a big lift every month. But because of the efficiencies that we have been able to gain, I do that with a payroll department of 5 people. That's amazing, absolutely amazing to accomplish that with just 5 people. And getting it right every month, being accurate, as Rick said about, we all have errors that we face, right? When you're doing a lot of work, you have errors. We have tremendously reduced the number of errors because everything is in one system instead of moving it from hire and checking experience and education level and all that, all the way through paying. It's all in one system. And we can check it. And our employees can check it, as Rick said. They can go in and look at anything within the system, or not anything, but almost anything that pertains to them. Their pay, their benefits, their withholdings, direct deposit, what their experience level is, all those things are in one place for everyone.
How many days they have off, they can request their days off through the system as well.
That's absolutely huge. Leave accruals and taking leave is huge.
And let's step back just a minute for the benefits of an HCM too. Part of the benefits is not just the technology. We always talk here at Cherokee about aligning our people, our processes, and our technology. Whereas Kronos has been that enabler from a technological standpoint, we had to assess and re-engineer our processes to leverage the benefits that an HCM offers us. And that goes to the point of an ERP versus an HCM. An ERP, like we said, is transactional. Well, you can do transactions any number of ways. We didn't digitize our paper processes. We re-engineered those processes to streamline and gain those efficiencies that Ken is talking about. And we use that with different aspects. And again, what Ken and Rick are talking about, we look at the system HCM from different perspectives. We look at it from our employees. We look at it from our administrators. We look at it from our state. We have to integrate and report at a statewide level to get our funding to pay those labor costs. So from a compliance management, an HCM has allowed us to easily adapt and report as well.
And that's so important, as Brad just mentioned, the funding part. If we don't report our people correctly to the state, then we don't get the money for those people, right? That's huge. Again, that's make or break a budget. And that's not apparent in today, that's apparent next year because it lags a year, right? The funding from the state lags, the information and funding lags a year. So if we misreport today, we won't know it on the bottom line until next year. And we can't have that. So it's got to be accurate and it's got to be real so that we can test it.
Data analytics become critical to that. How we capture, what data we do capture, how we capture it, when we capture it, and then how we can analyze that so that we're proactive in those decisions.
That's great, guys. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the time that you've given. You've answered some key questions regarding ERP versus HCM, why and where, and what the differences and challenges and similarities that those experience. We really appreciate your time, and we appreciate the partnership that we have with Cherokee County Public Schools. Thank you again. Have a great day, and we appreciate your time.
Well, Dan, you certainly started the conversations off pretty right into the weeds there. That was a really great conversation amongst some professionals who obviously not only know what they're doing, but really care about their district and the folks who they are in charge of and in charge to, right?
Right. I called them the K-12 Trinity, because when you have the three of those departments or divisions coming together and they're all aligned, not only for the efficiencies, but the people and also the technology, that then lends itself to a clear path for efficient processes. The employees are engaged, the employees are happy. And, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to pull it back a little bit though, and try to engage the folks who are on the webinar this afternoon. And Chris, if you could pull up the polling question, we kind of want to ask folks about what expectations do you find most important for your workforce at your school district to keep them engaged? So I know the gentleman from Cherokee were talking about some of the more holistic aspects of using an HCM system versus an ERP, and it involves some of these different aspects. Is it the technology or the being able to access information through a portal? Is it the self-service that employees can, as the gentlemen were mentioning, go in and look at their own hours and look at their scheduling and those sort of things? Is it the transparency, the ability for workers to go in and feel kind of connected to the district and their resources and see that they're a part of it? Confidence in leadership. That was certainly something that the folks from Cherokee mentioned. A pride in mission and work, and fairness and equity. Now, those last two are really important kind of intangibles that, and I guess we can get into this when you talk about an ERP system or when you talk about implementing a technology system. It's a little tough to kind of make those connections between a pride and mission work and fairness and equity and what you click on a screen, right? So So when we ask the audience, if you could put your answers in there, we'll get to those answers a little bit later in the presentation. But right now, I really think let's go to Dan and Cheryl and their initial thoughts on that presentation, specifically talking about those ERP gaps.
So Cheryl, you and I, we know each other quite well, and we've had some conversations in the past. This time of the year, schools and districts are trying to figure out what they're going to need for next fall. I mean, yeah, it's March, but we're thinking about allocations. What people are we going to need in each building, and what positions are going to be needed to be filled? So this allocation dance that we do with each of the buildings and then over to the school district office is very much the conversation and time right now. And to make sure that we have those positions for those the right positions for those people that are interested, it just makes it makes it a seamless process in interviewing and putting people into those jobs and responsibilities, so that when the school year does start off, it's much faster, it's much easier, and we just pick up with the instruction.
I think that's critically important. And I think, Dan, you made a very cogent point that timing is everything in a school district. And we all know there's been, some chaotic events and some disruption that's happened, but we as educators are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and looking towards next year, as you mentioned, the positions, who needs to do what, who's coming back, who has, contracted with us, how many positions, even school principals now are in critical positions because they've got to know their staffing needs, they've got to know their enrollment needs and build those together with a new synergy about we are going to be back face to face next fall. I mean, there's a great deal of confidence in that plan. And so districts have to make sure they have the people when all those children come back to us and walk in the door. But as we heard from Cherokee, that's about money.
Right.
It's all about money. And budgets are due to the state. I know when I was chief technology officer, my budgets were due in April because they had, it was like, why are we talking about budgets in April when it's, next September? But all that has to go through a board process,
Right.
budget revisions. And so to have the data is the biggest piece of solving the problem about how do we plan for the fall. You've got to have the correct data in the correct place with access and control to the right people.
And one of the things too, Cheryl, that I've noticed is that when we look at an ERP versus an HCM, and we look at specifically onboarding from an HCM perspective, I know that in the past, lots of things fell through the cracks. We were doing paper shuffling, and I had to go to this office, and I had to go to this office, and I had to do this, whatever those tasks were. Now, what we can do when we onboard an employee, we can take them through a logistical process that makes sense for the employee as well as the district, the employer, and make sure that everything is ticked off, whether it's the I-9s, maybe it's certifications, maybe it's just as easy as picking up their employee badge, but we know that we have that process in place. And having the technology to do that really lends itself to that efficiencies in filling in those gaps, where an HCM is able to do that and take it, all the way to the very end from hire to retire. Possibly there's some gaps in the ERP that they're not able to go dig deeper into that particular area.
Dan, never a more valid point was made because we're looking at hiring generations of employees that most of them are not quite as mature as I am. And so this is a generation that is totally digital.
Right.
They grew up with everything on a phone. I mean, I told somebody the other day, they're better with their thumbs than they are with all their fingers. And so as they move through the process of looking for a school district that maybe they want to work for, looking for job openings, deciding how will they be hired, how will they be notified, They're not looking for a grandma and grandpa system, as you said, where they have to go into the school district, sit in a lobby, wait for somebody to talk to them. They want the information at their fingertips. They want to look at it 24/7, morning or night. And
That's right.
then they start to decide, do I want to work for a full 21st century school district? Because they're going to see those benefits accrue to them through their lifetime experience of working there. Or are they going to go back to the old ways? You can't recruit and you can't retain employees today without that efficiency and the transparency that you talked about, Dan. They don't want to cost money on the phone. They want to look at it at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, one of the things that I remember the conversation back to the Cherokee gentleman, they want to see and make sure that there's a representation of diversity in their school district. And because the students, the employees, if they identify with people that are similar to them, then it makes that experience much easier and much better, and it keeps them there in that position probably longer. If they don't see that, then they may want to say, I'll go to a school district next door or into another county or something like that. But what school districts are doing now is seeing, where do we need to fill in some of the things that would be best representative of our district that we want to be? So it could be on race, it could be gender, it could be, do we have enough men at the elementary level teaching? Do we have enough representation of a heavy Hispanic population when we know that that's who we're serving? Do these kids see those same kind of people? And I think that's important when you start talking about that allocation, to look at diversity as an example.
Well, and I was on a call last week with a lot of school districts, and several of them, their number one goal was diversity across the spectrum in their school district. Because as you said, the student population is shifting and changing year by year in districts. And so that representation and having the data, I think it was so important what Cherokee said about the access to real data-driven decisions,
Right.
not going into folders, not counting people in spreadsheets. Time is a critical component of being able to work efficiently in a school district. There's no more days added to the school calendars. There's no more, we don't have 420 days in a year. So we've got to make the most of the time that we have. And you've got to have the data that's easily accessible and to the right people at the right time. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough, because as a CTO and a former principal and a former teacher, I know that having that data quickly, and I think the superintendent said the right data, the exactly right data. You talk about some big mistakes in funding when you have the wrong data and then you get audited. I mean, those are nightmares that nobody wants. But the UKG system provides that transparency and access and accuracy in ways that, quite frankly, I haven't seen before.
Well, that kind of leads us into a second part of the conversation, I think, Cheryl, and you mentioned the idea of collaboration and working on that leadership level between HR, finance, and IT leaders. I think we need to talk a little bit about that data again. I mean, now in the past, not to date myself, but when we would talk about IT systems and bringing things together, it was always about the IT and the curriculum, the academic. It was always kind of focused on the students and getting literacy things together. Never saw much mention of integrating the data that we're talking about now, and even more sophisticated, the idea of the diversity and using those numbers of attendance for something as forward thinking about faculty placement versus the ethnic makeup of your students. But that takes a lot of leadership in each one of those departments to kind of come together. Talk a little bit, Dan, maybe start off about how that happens in an HCM setup versus an old-fashioned ERP.
Well, the collaboration is really, really important, because one of the things that the school district and the employees need to take a look at is they need to be looking at the same data. One can't be looking at data over here and another one looking at completely data that's been pulled together over here, because then you have information that just doesn't match up. And you can't make decisions based on that data to improve learning in the school district, improve efficiencies behind that, behind the house, improve the budgets and your spending and things like that. So if you're looking at the same data and that everyone's looking at it together, then you're making a clear path to what you need to be doing and your goals that you set forward.
I think it's more important than ever, Dan and Kevin. We've seen an influx of money that's come in, federal money that heretofore we have not seen. And we just saw the recent passage of a huge amount of money that's going to be flowing through states in different ways to school systems. And a lot of that is going to be in terms of positions and staffing. I mean, I've heard superintendents and chief academic officers and CFOs and CIOs talk about that over the last couple of weeks. Well, it's come to fruition. So being able to talk amongst yourselves in ways that years before we didn't do is of the paramount importance. And I say that because prior to this chaos, everybody was face to face.
Right.
You could walk down the hall, you could walk across the hall. Who knows how districts are going to come back together? And I've heard districts talking about giving people the opportunity to work face to face, maybe 2 days a week, and the other 3 days work remotely because of systems integration. So to be able to offer those types of opportunities and to be more efficient, you have to have what I just said, systems integration. And people oftentimes think, Kevin, you were talking about the IT piece. They're always like, oh yeah, our systems, they all integrate. Systems are also people.
Right.
So all of these people in leadership roles have to collaborate and communicate in new ways to bring that efficiency. And then you have that total systems, human systems integration and IT systems integration, and you get more bang for your buck. And the truth of the matter is, even with the money coming, this is limited money.
Right.
So we've got to know how to use it efficiently and squeeze every penny we can out of it so that our districts can improve and grow and prosper.
Well, that's one thing about education is that they'll figure it out and how to spend money wisely. And because, as a former teacher, I spent my own monies, teachers spend their own monies, administrators, even your crosswalk guards, they spend their own monies for the betterment of the kids in the community. One of the things that I see that's important is if we improve these efficiencies through the HCM solution of technology, then what we do is that we eliminate mistakes. That's the one thing that the Cherokee gentlemen were talking about. If you have a mistake on your budgets, on your spending, it's going to impact you not today, but next year. And that means it is also going to impact allocation of positions, funding of who's going to be where. It'll also impact the instructional funds as well too of the students. And at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is to help these kids get a better education and to be able to be productive citizens of our world. So I think it's important that HCM, even though it's behind the house and it's kind of the wizard behind the curtain, so to speak, it has a huge, powerful play here that impacts the overall goals and efficiencies of the school district.
I think that's a great analogy, the behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. But I'm going to share with you, Dan, that I think that HCM system is now starting to peek behind the curtain out because employees want, need, and in many ways demand that.
Yep.
They go to their boards asking for that transparency. And the people that sit at the front of the house in the decision-making positions have to have that confluence of data to be able to drive those decisions, like you said, not just today, but in the future. There is nothing worse than a school district having to give back money because of incorrect data. And with the proper HCM system, I think those days are passé. This won't occur because, as you said, everyone's looking at the same system in real time. The data's being validated, and employees are seeing it going, wait a minute, I have this degree or that degree, or these days are wrong. And I have seen with the correct system like this, employee satisfaction and morale is improved greatly, and communication is improved greatly. And I think we saw that across that Cherokee system that was so impressive.
Well, I think it's also going to give the opportunity for the employee to stay longer with that district.
Yeah.
They're valued. They understand what the workforce is asking for, and the district has answered that. So the whole goal is to keep your workforce in place from the pre-hire to hire, and as long as we possibly can from to retire. I hope to be on the retire end soon enough, but I just think that school districts, when they have and capture an ideal employee, they want to make sure that that experience is valued, they feel valued, and what resources, what tools can we provide these employees to feel as if they're a part of the overall objective and focus of the district.
There's a cost associated with employees moving in and out of the school district.
Mhm.
Employee retention has, you can quantify that in terms of how important it is to a school district with experience, with lack of retraining, with mistakes. I mean, you start moving people in and out of the school district, it's not just an issue at the classroom level with consistency of instruction. It's an issue at the district
That's
level
right.
administratively where these funds are being handled. We heard Cherokee say they had 5 employees for payroll. I bet those employees have been there a long time and they've
Yep.
worked on retaining them, and using the Kronos HCM system, I think is part of the way they're like, okay, look what we've done for you employees. And they're like, okay, I'm all in.
Can you imagine if they didn't have this and they were doing these manual processes, how many mistakes there would be? And that's what UKG's focus is, Kevin, is to make sure that we eliminate those mistakes. We pay our people correctly. We understand the time that they've given to us, because this 8 to 9 hours, maybe 10 hours a day that they spend 5 days a week is a huge investment away from their families. And we've got to make sure that we reward them based upon the work that they do and paying them accurately.
Well, it's employee satisfaction, guys.
Mhm. Yep.
It's about building, I mean, there's research, there's surveys done. Employee satisfaction and morale is a key piece of running any organization. And I would even venture to say it's one of the most important pieces of running a school district, because the employees are the heart and soul of a school district.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
But they seem like such small things, but from this conversation, I'm gleaning that it's those kind of like they're subtleties that just help an employee in their day-to-day experience, right? Which I want to go deeper into the idea of the employee experience, but first, Chris, if we could pull up the results from our earlier poll to see what people. Well, look at that, a confidence in leadership. Everyone would certainly agree with, and then a pretty good across the board of other things that are important. But Cheryl, Dan, any immediate off the top of your head remarks as a result of those results?
I'm not surprised on the confidence in leadership, because I think everyone strives to have a leader that is impactful, that gives them the direction of the overall goal of the district or the job that you're working on. So I think I'm not surprised at all on that one.
Well, I'm not surprised either, because so goes the leadership in a school district, so goes the entire school district. I mean,
right.
we've seen it, superintendents moving in and out of large, small, medium districts because there was no confidence in the leadership. And that trickles all the way down, to the classroom level, as you said earlier, to the school crossing guard. I think another important piece is fairness and equity that we saw there, well over 50%. There's a big push for equity, not just in instructional, but equity and fairness in how do we deal with our employees? How do we provide information to our employees? Which is what we've been talking about right now this afternoon,
Right.
is the systems that our employees use, like you said, from recruitment to retirement. Employees want to be treated fairly and equally, and they want to see that information and data, and they want the district to be transparent. And
Right.
new employees want it more than ever.
Right. Right.
When I think, especially now too, when you see over this past year, there's been an increased focus on, well, social emotional learning when it comes to the students. But what I think we've also come to realize is that this has been a group trauma, not just the students,
Yeah.
but for faculty and for administrators, for all of us, really. And there's also that kind of abrupt move from, and I know this for districts was pretty much in person, right? And then now has been in this great beta test, everyone thrust into this remote setup. And then with an expectation of coming back at the fall, hopefully, or some sort of hybrid. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that employee experience. So now, through the use of the HCM, was that an easier transition for districts who are using that sort of platform to go remote and then ultimately go back? Dan, talk a little bit about how you see your technologies being used AP after the pandemic.
AP after the pandemic. I see, when in the quiz that we just had, or the poll that we had, equitability and fairness is extremely important, because when employees were working from home, some employees were working from home, some were not. You don't want to have a one-off process for one set of employees that you don't have for another set. Because if you do that, then people are going to throw their arms up and say, this is not fair.
Mhm.
I am working from home. I'm trying to keep my family safe as well too, but yet you're paying them XYZ, or this is the treatment that they get. So you have to make sure that fairness is across the board. And to be able to do that, I believe a digital HCM solution will be able to give you that full accessibility of fairness to everyone across the district, no matter what role you have within the district.
I think the other point from the previous slide, Kevin, was important about, and I think I kind of referenced it earlier, that if you don't keep employees, it costs the district money.
Yeah.
That was an important research point. About 1/3 of an employee's salary, it takes that to find a replacement. Well, that is a lot of money if you start moving employees like, a conveyor belt through a school district. And so that increasing retention piece, I think, is part of the return on investment that you get from a properly designed, implemented, and built for school districts systems.
Right.
Mhm.
And that's what I've seen, the HCM system by UKG. This is a system that is built for school districts, with school districts' needs in mind, and this retention piece in place. And as you said, so eloquently, Dan, the fairness and equity piece. I would venture to say, not, a crystal ball, but that we're going to have other things that are going to come up for school
Yep.
districts,
Absolutely.
where hopefully not as drastic as what we've had, but we know now that we've got to be more well prepared than we were before.
Right.
That there's just no, we can make the public put up with, hey, we don't know, we never had this before, we've had to
Yeah.
close, oh, we're
Yep.
going to be closed another month, another month, another month. The public kind of put up with that.
Right.
But those days of giving us a grace period
Yep.
over that are over. So
Yeah.
schools have to be able to respond to whatever happens, whether it's something like this, or if it's a natural disaster, or if it's a weather-related incident down here in Texas, freezing snow. Who thought the whole state of Texas would be frozen for weeks. So this, you have to have a system in place to be able to provide that comfort and that competency and that confidence in the school district that's being run with public dollars.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because before there were snow days and there were hurricane days where I'm in Florida, and there were, fire days, on the west side of the United States. Now, and they would be out for a day or two. Well, what you're going to see now, I think in the future, is that you're going to see instruction is not going to be interrupted. Guess what? Instruction may be presented remote on the dime. The one thing I found out from education, it was a year ago that I came back from spring break and we shut down. My son went straight to remote learning. And you know what? The teachers answered the call. They figured that out. It may not have been the best situation right there, but it got better every day, and every day we went on with this pandemic. But to have a human capital management solution provide employees with that ability to do that remotely, wherever they are, whether it's handheld devices, it's working from their computer, self-service, whatever that might look like, from interviewing, from applying, from onboarding, and also from offboarding. I mean, when Cheryl, when you retired from your school district, you wanted to make sure that you offboarded the exit interview. Things are returned to the school district that you had. These are things. These are resources and assets that the district has put together and had given to you. We talk about the monetary assets that come from a human capital management, but think about the knowledge, the brain trust of information that when you lose an employee, that employee takes that information with you. So that intellectual property goes with them. If we were able to keep our people together in our district and keep them happy moving forward, they're going to stay with us for a long, long time. I know that today's workforce requires a digital footprint for their from their employer, and if they don't get it from this school district, they're going to go to the next one. So with our today's workforce, these people coming into these positions, they demand this, and guess what? We've got to answer that call, and we've got to give them what they need.
Well, the other piece I think that you reference, it's important, is the people in district office that are doing the work, they may not be able to get to their desktop computer.
Right.
And we saw that just massive shock and awe about that. So with the proper HCM system, it doesn't matter where you are. You could be relocated due to some natural disaster to another part of the country, like you said, the hurricane situation we deal with in this part of the country.
Right.
And they can log in from wherever they are, and they can process, and workflow can continue.
Right.
Well, having access to your desktop or your filing cabinet, that's not something that we're going to have to be able to provide 24/7 to people 365. It's got to be on this screen.
Right.
And so with the right HCM system, it doesn't matter where you are, and it doesn't matter if someone gets hired. There were tons of districts I talked to that onboarded, hired, and moved teachers into remote classroom systems, and they never saw them. They never walked in the school. So how does that happen? It happens with an HCM system that's built for success.
Right.
And you've got to have it. I mean, today, more than ever, you've got to have an HCM system that's built for now and the future.
So I have a couple questions that have come in that I think we still have some time left. One involves saying that Cherokee County Schools is unique in its ability to get HR, finance, and IT to work so collaboratively. Like that's a credit to them and their leadership. What advice do you have to something started at a school district where the synergy maybe is not that strong? You may have seen that before, Cheryl.
I have seen that before, and leadership comes at all different levels. I mean, it's not just the leadership from the top, the superintendent that demands, expects, and then processes are implemented in that way. So I would say people on the webinar today or those who listen, to the recording, that sometimes you have to look in the mirror to say, you know what? I see something that needs to be changed. I saw some information on a webinar. I'm going to present this at cabinet level, or I'm going to go talk to the CFO, or I'm going to, I'm in the personnel department of a small school district. I'm going to go talk to the IT people that I know and ask them about this. And that leadership exists up and down the continuum of employees. So my suggestion, I know that I started an IT department, was CIO almost 25 years. And most of the things that we're doing today did not exist when I started, but I was like, excuse me, can I tell you about something? Can I share some information? Maybe Kevin, it wasn't quite that subtle as you know me, but that leadership exists in all of us, and we need to be able to step up and get the information to the right people to improve not only our job and our function, but the working of the school district. And that's my suggestion to anybody is step up and provide the information. And it may not happen today or tomorrow, but you've got to keep pushing away at what you know will improve the school district and make the school district better for all the employees and for all the students.
Right.
Yeah, Dan, any further thoughts on that?
I mean, I have never been in that executive leadership role that Cheryl has been in, but I would say I would be looking for my superintendent to make those changes, the different departments to make those changes, but don't just come to the leadership with the problem. Give suggestion of the solution. What would you do if you were in that position?
That's great. That's great. Another question that came in, and this is good because we haven't touched it exactly on it, but we have an HR payroll solution that we like, but it doesn't support our complex time and attendance needs. Is integration of a workforce management system with our existing system a possibility? And can you talk about the pros and cons of doing something like that?
Interesting you say. I will say that we've had this conversation many times across the United States with the K-12 group. UKG is invested into K-12 team of individuals that have worked in this industry like myself for many years. And what we have found out is that when we understand the vernacular, the vocabulary, how to handle the business there, and that's been great. When we go to the customer, we go to the client, and they see that we have that information, it really makes them feel safe and secure. What we've done with our Time for School solution with and Time for School Plus, our HCM solution for timekeeping, is that we have that integration. We can work with the ERPs so that you can collect that time. What's different from school districts is that we have multiple calendars. Different employees are on different calendars. Instead of just having everyone working 5 days a week, we have different calendars for different employees. So we can certainly manage that calendar to that employee. They may have different supervisors from the 8 to 3 job. And guess what? Maybe that bus driver also is a ticket taker at a game. And we
That
need to
happens
pay
all
them.
the time.
Absolutely. And we need to pay them accurately. So we have that extra duty pay available to provide the school districts. Our understanding of what school districts needs is extremely valuable. One of the things that my team says is, you're K-12, we're K-12, and we understand K-12. So that's just some of the examples, but we can certainly provide that workforce management, that timekeeping solution for you, and be able to interface that with your payroll system.
And I think that's so important. Like I said, as a former CIO, CTO, and I'm not unique in this, some people are very wedded to their processes and their systems. And so when someone wants to come in and rock their proverbial boat where they're just comfortable, everything's working okay, they're like, so what's this going to do to me? Not for me sometimes. What's this going to do to me? And so that ability to provide the missing piece of that puzzle and provide that human capital management piece, as you said, timekeeping that's not there within the comfort of a system they already have.
Right.
That's a benefit, I think, Dan, that y'all have that a lot of other systems don't have, because there's nothing scarier to a district, and certainly a CIO and a CFO, than a rip and replace solution.
You're absolutely
Like,
right.
we're going to come in, we're going to replace it. That, there may be an over time process where some of that happens, but at the beginning, you want a puzzle piece that fits in where your missing pieces are and can integrate with the other systems in a
Yeah.
way that's seamless, effective, and you know what? Cost effective too.
Right. You want a partner that understands the industry and the market and understands the vocabulary, because what we talk about school districts, if you go into a retail or hospitality, they're going to think that we have 3 different heads and we've got horns out of our necks, because we talk differently. We conduct business differently. So, with the UKG K-12 team, we understand what you're going through. We walk you through that process. Even if you have to rip and replace, you're going to rip and replace with a baseline configuration that we built out specifically for school districts, so that they understand that they don't have to start from ground zero, but be able to start from a baseline that other school districts across the country have used.
Well, and you know what? Choice is a big deal in this, because there's a lot of systems out there going, oh, we can take care of you. But giving a school district a choice to see solutions that have been successfully implemented. And I know Dan and I've talked about this before, as having a reference district that a school district can talk to, that is a huge benefit. And Dan, I know I've heard you talk about, we have tons of reference districts where other districts can begin to develop a comfort with knowing whatever solution's weaving its way in to change, whether it's partial or total, they can talk, as Cherokee School District talked about, you can talk to these people. And I know in my job as a CTO, I never put in a solution where I hadn't talked to 3 or 4 colleagues around the country and said, okay,
Right.
tell me your experience. And one of the first things were, oh, they're a great partner for us. I said, tell me more. Because that's what a school district's looking for.
Why are they a great partner?
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, I knew the toughest part of my job here this hour would be to stop the conversation. There are so many different aspects of this that we could go on, but I really think we've packed in a lot of insight, not only with the gentleman from Cherokee, but Cheryl, you and Dan. It's just sitting here on the sidelines have gleaned a lot of great information and insights. So I'm going to wrap things up here. If you submitted a question that we didn't get into during the Q&A portion, someone from UKG will follow up with you directly.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank our presenters today for a very informative presentation. And I'd like to thank all the audience members for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. Thanks again for participating and have a great day. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks, Kevin.
Dan.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.